We are running a little bit over time, so we try not to let this session drag on too much. But as Amy Rose introduced, we're going to be talking primarily about Web3 gaming today. And shout out to anyone that does own coins. I think Amy Rose said we're going to be telling you what we're working on. Me personally, I'm working on a bag of coins going to zero, looking at CoinGecko a few minutes ago. But these three individuals, they have more exciting things to talk about today. I think personally, Web3 gaming is quite misunderstood. And we've got really three great experts today to sort of shine a light on what the hell Web3 gaming is. It sounds kind of cool, but I think it's misinterpreted a lot of times. So I'm going to introduce first Leah Callon-Butler, director of How Are We Going to Go Here, Leah. I sent Leah a Telegram message last night, a voice note saying, I hope I don't butcher the name. So here it is. The spotlight is on Emfarsis.
Yeah, perfect.
And a board member of the Blockchain Game Alliance and also a CoinDesk columnist. Adam Hannigan, founder and CEO of Sunflower Land, in theme with the hat today, Adam. And Trevor Topfer, executive director of Blockchain New Zealand and also CEO of Avatars Global. My name is Greg, as you can see on the little Zoom. I'm the general manager here at Upside, also the co-founder of an event that Leah spoke at a few years ago called NFT Fest Australia, and a feature writer for Cointelegraph. So a little bit of a competitor there to Leah at CoinDesk. But Leah, I want to firstly throw it over to you, just so you have a rich background in Web3 gaming. A number of your YouTube videos, which one I was watching last night, have blown up, 1 million+ views. You do a lot of work in the Philippines. Do you want to just give us a little bit of a snapshot of how you got into crypto and then how you found your niche with sort of Web3 gaming?
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for that amazing introduction. And it's always a little bit weird for me being in a room full of Australian accents. So that's very nice to be with you all today. Yeah, so I'm obviously Aussie, but I left the country in 2017 and I've been based in the Philippines since 2018. We actually came over here because I was previously working on building a payments gateway, crypto payments gateway. This was pre-stablecoins era. And we'd been outsourcing work to the Philippines, like a lot of international companies do. We were struggling to hire Solidity devs in Europe, so we decided to come to the Philippines and spend a month on the ground with our devs here that we'd been outsourcing to, because they were really keen to take on more challenging projects and they wanted to upskill and learn more about blockchain. We thought, well, hey, why not give them that opportunity? If we're actually in the office, we can help train them up. We're only meant to spend a month here, but we never left. We immediately fell in love with the Philippines and developed a thesis that there was going to be a crypto adoption miracle happen here. It's a very young, tech-savvy population. People at the time, there was more than 80% of the adult population unbanked, and very high English language literacy, among other factors. But it was kind of like this pressure cooker for crypto adoption. And then in 2020, it happened with the emergence of Axie Infinity. Prior to that, I'd been really interested in crypto asset-backed remittances, which was being discussed on the last panel around financial inclusion. And there was this idea that crypto could make it faster and cheaper for Filipinos who were working overseas to send money home to their families. When people started playing Axie Infinity amid the pandemic, it was one of my friends who rang me up and he was like, oh, you know, you're into that blockchain for social impact stuff. You're never going to believe it, but there's people in the next province over playing this game to put food on the table amid the pandemic when everyone was jobless. I actually didn't believe it, but upon seeing that this phenomenon was true and it was real, I wrote about it for my CoinDesk column. It was the first article that ever appeared on there for Axie. They had less than 500 DAU at the time. And I came to the conclusion that we'd been working on the wrong problem this whole time. I was more interested in figuring out how Filipinos could earn money from home without having to leave their families, and looking at how Web3 could make that possible. So through, I guess, cross-border money, people don't have to be. So that was kind of like how we sort of changed our thesis and started to focus on Web3 gaming full-time. And since then, we've made a lot of content to help share those stories of Web3 positively impacting lives in the Philippines, as you mentioned on YouTube. The most recent one is called Metaverse Filipino Worker. If anyone is familiar with the term OFW, which stands for Overseas Filipino Worker, it's the same idea, except Filipinos still have to leave the Philippines in search of great work, but instead of getting there by a bus, a boat, a train, or a plane, they get there with a computer, an internet connection, and a crypto wallet. So you can go to metaversefilipinoworker.com to actually check it out. But yeah, I've been very, very focused on the play to earn movement. I'm sure we'll talk about that because it's definitely fallen out of favor over the last few years, and sustainability has been questioned. But yeah, I'm still very focused on the earning opportunities that Web3 gaming can provide.
Amazing. And Leah, we might, if you're able to actually put the YouTube link of that latest Metaverse Filipino Worker, because I was watching it, like I said, last night, and it was a fascinating video. So drop that in the chat for everyone that they might be able to check out later. So Adam, over to you. You're the founder and CEO of Sunflower Land. Do you want to just give everyone a little bit of a TLDR of what Sunflower Land is and how you found yourself building in Web3 gaming?
Yeah, thanks for the intro. Very, very happy to be here. I've got quite a unique introduction into the Web3 gaming space, which I kind of stumbled into it. So 4 years ago, I built an open source prototype on Polygon. It was a fully decentralized game where players could farm crops, upgrade their farms, chop trees, trade assets. And I did that because I was curious about the Web3 space. I came from a game design background, wanted to learn how smart contracts worked. So I did what was natural to me and I built a game. At the time, it was donate to play, 20 cents to charity. Launched that game and kind of forgot about that. A few months later, the sort of crypto stratosphere and crypto influencers took over and took this game from 50 players to 500,000. Anyone who is on Polygon around 2021 probably remembers this game. It was a bit infamous as the game that broke Polygon. TLDR, transactions just went through the roof. Nobody could use the blockchain because so many people were playing this decentralized game. Since then, I rebranded as Sunflower Land. And for the last 3.5 years, I've just been wading through all those different challenges that gaming projects have, user acquisitions, UX. Something that's been very top of mind for us is building sustainable economies. So very glad that's been mentioned. The last 9 to 10 months, we've actually had a deflationary token, deflationary resources, something which is almost unheard of in Web3 gaming economies. And it's definitely something I'm very passionate about. So the project going forward at the moment, we are going multi-chain. We are looking at more deflationary aspects and really just amplifying and trying to come up with new innovations in Web3. So yeah, super happy to be here and share some of my experiences.
Amazing. We'll come back to you in a second, Adam. Trevor, over to you. You want to just give us a little bit of a overview of your role with both Blockchain New Zealand and also what Avatars Global is?
Sure. And like the others said, there's a huge amount of intros and heavyweights in the room, so I'll try not to disappoint. I'm actually Aussie, so sorry, Leah. You thought you might have got a Kiwi accent over here just to break things up a bit, but unfortunately not. I moved over to New Zealand about 13 years ago now, and it's interesting the space over here, and I kind of have a very close eye on what's going on over in Australia as well, and there's a lot of similar problems. So for a lot of the people in the room who are thinking about what it might be like in New Zealand, it's very similar to what's going on in Australia, except maybe about a year or so behind. So for blockchain, my role is really just to advocate for and grow the community here, and try and build pathways and enable new builders on blockchain, existing builders on blockchain, international companies that are building on blockchain, and our government to try and get together and make a really creative and innovative hub out of New Zealand for blockchain ecosystem. We actually have a few very interesting opportunities in New Zealand with some of the way certain assets and things are treated here that's a little bit different to Aussie, which is an interesting opportunity, I think, for blockchain. And it's got very little to do with Web3 gaming. So maybe that's a subject for another panel. And then on the Web3 gaming side, I started professionally probably about 2020, just before the big NFT run of the last cycle. I started working for a company who was interested in building a NFT wearables business. So we build clothing and accessories and things that are interchangeable on different gaming experiences. It was a great theory, and I think we bought into it way too early. We're still working on the infrastructure to enable those sorts of things to happen, and I'm sure we're going to get into that in the panel today. So that brand is now producing. We've built Web3 e-commerce. So we've got a product that empowers every Shopify store to add Wallet Connect, token rewards, all of those sorts of things inside their shop. So we kind of think of that as like a Web3 loyalty program. So that's up and running. We've also got some interesting augmented reality experience components and skill sets in the team. And we make clothing that comes to life. So we're sort of transitioning between, what people think of as the physical and the digital. We sort of play in that space a little bit with augmented reality by taking physical products and augmenting them, which after a while working in that space, I met a couple of very talented animators and 3D artists, and we saw an opportunity. I'm very fascinated by the intersection of blockchain and AI. I think there's a really interesting thing happening in that space at the moment. So the company I was just talking about is part of a bigger organization called Futureverse. Futureverse might be known by some of the people in the room. They're working on the interoperability sort of layer of Web3 gaming. And so we have looked at how we can use AI and interoperable game assets to create new experiences and to build new economies around them. And we've got our first kind of proof of concept up and running, which is what Amy Rose was talking about a minute ago. So we've got cinema quality avatars that you can talk with, and they talk back to you, voice-to-voice kind of LLM protocols. And we're building a decentralized or blockchain-based game around it where the interactions with the assets or the interaction with the avatars will be kind of stored and owned on a decentralized ledger by the owner or the user. And then we'll be able to do different rewards and open up different assets and game experiences as a result, a bit of a play-to-own type model. So probably something that Leah is pretty familiar with and focused on, but yeah, building the idea of economics around gameplay.
Amazing, Trevor. And yes, I'm sure many people in the audience will be aware of Futureverse and everything they've got their hands on there. I want to take a step back and throw this to all three panelists, but just addressing what Web3 gaming is in general. For many people sitting in the audience have probably heard the terminology Web3 gaming, but haven't really got their head around it. Maybe don't even have an example. I mean, Leah obviously shared with us Axie Infinity, which caught fire in that sort of 2021 mania wave. But I want to throw it around, and I'll start with you, Leah. How would you define Web3 gaming? And then secondly, why to this point has there been, in your opinion, a significant amount of pushback by traditional gamers for adopting Web3 games?
Can I just start by saying thank you for asking that? Because I really think that not enough people are asking, like, why are we putting Web3 in Web3 games in the first place? And I think there's a lot of people working to define what a Web3 game is. I was just at Consensus Hong Kong, and there were a few panels on Web3 gaming, not many, just a few. But what we were seeing was there was this real push-pull that, like, decentralization is on a spectrum, and there's some people who are leaning into decentralization for decentralization's sake. And what I mean by that is that they're really exploring, why would you actually build a game on blockchain? Like, what kind of unique attributes can blockchain bring to a game that we've never seen before? So that might be things like composability and interoperability, so that people can come in and create their own games completely permissionlessly. This has happened in the past with modding, if you're familiar with it. Like, some of the greatest games of all time are mods, but this could mean that it would really open up to creativity and allow that space to really grow because people can do it permissionlessly. There's a range of other attributes, and I won't sort of go down the rabbit hole too much with that. But I personally love that corner of the ecosystem because I think they're really leaning into figuring out what they can build with blockchain games that has never been possible before. However, these games are notoriously slow, clunky, they're hard to play. There's only certain types of mechanics and loops that really work with it at the moment. So they're quite popular with turn-based games, for example. Like, you know, a first-person shooter is really hard to build on the blockchain if you're going to be 100% fully on-chain. So you've got these challenges there, and you start to see where like traditional gamers are pushing back because they're like, well, I don't want to play something slow and clunky. I have a certain expectation in terms of the gamer experience that I'm not seeing in these kind of fully on-chain games and sometimes called autonomous worlds. At the other end of the spectrum, you've got things like, so for example, the really big breakthrough game that I think everyone would agree for last year was a game called Off the Grid. It's by Gunzilla Games. It's a shooter and it was wildly popular. But the makers of this game kind of come from a different perspective where they're saying we should be actually bundling all the Web3 stuff under the hood. Gamers don't want to have to, you know, deal with wallets and seed phrases, and like maybe they don't even care about ownership of assets. Maybe a portion of our audience will care about that, but not all of them. And we don't really want to shove it down their throat. So I think what's interesting in terms of like what we're seeing with blockchain games now, and from an outsider's perspective, there's been a lot of FUD. There's been lesser investment into the space. It's been very, very difficult to onboard new users to these games. But from what I'm seeing is that there is a huge explosion of experimentation. As I said, like back in 2021, I think people looked at this space and kind of thought there was like one game, one team. Now we've got thousands of playable games out there, and all of them are taking a different approach in terms of how much blockchain they're going to put into this blockchain game. I think these guys could explain a lot better because they've actually got their own use cases that they're working on. I'd love to hear from Adam, particularly on this with Sunflower Land, because we had quite a few people on the Emfarsis team who love playing Sunflower Land. But yeah, I think in terms of that, we're still trying to figure it out. What is a Web3 game? And I love the fact that so many people are taking different approaches to this. I think that's what's making this space super exciting right now and one to continue watching.
Love it. Thank you so much, Leah. Adam, over to you.
Nice. Yeah, those are some awesome points. I've had a lot of first-hand experience with this. About 2 years ago, I published an article saying why everything should be decentralized on the blockchain. About 9 months ago, I published another article saying the mistakes we made with putting everything decentralized on the blockchain. I think it's been this evolution. And as you said, every project is just trying their own way to figure it out. When we initially launched, we were completely on-chain, no game servers, all the data storage. When we moved into our next stage, we had everything tokenized inside of the game. So we had 5,000 different resources, wearables, all of the analytics with the game was tokenized on the blockchain as well. We had about 5 different interoperability campaigns with different blockchain games. And we found while those were interesting, they didn't actually come through. So those sort of points of trying to give as much transparency, interoperability with other games, the gamers just didn't engage with that. And at the end of the day, when you're building a game company, you need to focus on what is going to attract users, what is going to keep people playing. 2 of the big things which I have seen with Web3 and why I'm so bullish on building all my future games on Web3 is how emergent systems come into this. So for game designers out there, one of the most exciting aspects of the game is you can get emergent behaviors from players. So you as the game designer, you have some rough controls, mechanics, core loops in a game, but then players start interacting and sort of breaking that fourth wall and coming up with their own strategies, their own systems. And where Web3 sits in with that is when you give players freedom to own game items, to trade accounts, wearables on their own accord, they end up coming up with their own strategies. And so in our game, you can compete in a chapter competition to win an NFT. And it takes a lot of grinding, for instance. On the other hand, you could have someone which just buys 100 cows, gets milk, then goes to a secondary marketplace and swaps that milk for some other resource, which will let them buy these NFTs as well. And you get these really incredible sort of strategies and players who they're not following the systems of their game. And as a player, they've just figured out their own strategy. They've got this sense of achievement, this sense of mastery over the game. And that actually unlocks an entirely new potential for game design. So that is something which I'm just extremely bullish on. The other side, where back to sort of the original question, is how it differentiates and what new sort of aspects defines Web3 gaming, is you get to focus a lot more on live operations. In traditional Web2 gaming, you see this model where people go off for 4 years, they build this really polished product, they launch it, it goes crazy for a couple of years, and then players move on to the next one. In Web3, what you see a lot is players getting early asset ownership, knowing that this game is going to be live operations. So it's an incomplete masterpiece. It's going to be built over 3 to 5 to 10 years as well. And because you have this sort of early priced in, people putting their value into the game, they own NFTs, you build this really loyal community. And in terms, you get these people not only just giving feedback, but we've got 100 open source developers who are actually fixing bugs in our game, adding quests, building features, lots of artists as well. And so you get to build this ground up community, which has a bit of a stake in the game. And it just creates this really incredible way to build a game where you're just saying, look, guys, we've got the building blocks here, but we need your help to actually build out this next stage. And the expectations in Web3 is that a game is never complete. People join this community knowing that it's going to keep improving and changing. So that was a bit of a spiel, but that's my insights into it.
I love it.
Can I just add to that real fast? Adam made it sound like it's fun or it's easy to build in the open like that, and it is so not. Like it might be expected in Web3, and it really is, you know, I would say exactly what Web3 builders should be doing, but it is really hard to build a game like that. And I think there's only a few people that are doing it authentically, like Sunflower Land, the likes of Pixels, Axie. I think Fableborn has a really active community as well. Like being out there and actually inviting all that feedback is so hard. So I just want to underscore that he makes it sound easy, but it's not.
Yeah, amazing, Leah. I think the phrase there, incomplete masterpiece, was well summed up, Adam. I might actually ask Leah and maybe Adam as I throw to Trevor, just for the purpose of the audience. I think, you know, similar to anything in crypto, it's good when you get your hands dirty with things, and it's not just always a university lecture. So I would encourage people to play Sunflower Land and maybe play some of these games, or at least try them out that Leah just mentioned. So Adam and Leah, if you want to, just while I throw to Trevor, just put maybe 2 or 3 games that people could go and check out. I think Merrilee from Decker will be able to distribute that information to the audience. But Trevor, over to you. We were actually chatting yesterday and you were giving the example of Roblox and Fortnite obviously being sort of more of the Web2 traditional model. But do you want to just give us a little bit of an insight into your world of what Web3 gaming means to you, and also just some of those high-level talking points you were giving to me around Roblox and Fortnite yesterday as good analogies for people that can't quite get their head around Web3 gaming?
Yeah, it's an interesting one because Web3 gaming, I think, is such a new space. We're all defining it as we go to work every day, and it as Adam pointed out, there's so much opportunity, and you could go in any direction. And oftentimes the game takes on a life of its own because of that, and you end up the game starts to have a bit of a life of its own. So in terms of you know, when I came into the space, you know, Fortnite and Roblox were the big games, and this vision of we're going to create the metaverse and it's going to be just like Fortnite, and everybody's going to spend a whole lot of money on these digital assets and be able to trade them and own them. And I think that definitely minted a lot of NFT collections out, this idea that this was where things were going and that these companies were all in on it. I think what happened ultimately is a lot of inexperienced companies us included, I'll put my hand up and say we dived in thinking it was going to be easy, realize that it's actually really hard, and it's a long way away. But the interesting thing with Roblox and Fortnite being the two biggest games on the planet is they've definitely shown that there's an appetite for this idea that if you make the game fun, people will play. And if you can give them some kind of ongoing reward and incentive mechanism that has an externalized value, then that's even better. And so I think that the thesis of Web3 gaming is to move into, digital identity, asset ownership, and the ability to move those assets across. I talk about my son a lot. He played Fortnite, and I spent a fortune. So any parents that are out there that are nodding their heads going, yes, another $15 for a bloody skin if you do your homework, or whatever it was that you were dangling, whatever carrot it was you were using to kind of get a task done. But when my son, after all that investment and time and years, and became actually pretty damn good at it at one point, and was umming and ahhing about going professional and all this sorts of stuff, and then hit a roadblock. He hit an age where Fortnite just wasn't ringing his bell anymore, and I quickly realized that that's a walled garden, and the problem with that is all of that time, investment, and money and benefit to Fortnite is worth next to nothing to my son or anybody else. And so I think that that's a great thesis, and that it will triumph in the end. And I think Web3's got a bright future. Web3 gaming's got a bright future ahead of it because of that. The other part of it that's interesting for me is we do a lot of Avatars Global does a lot of marketing, creative and engagement campaigns and things for different brands. And we're looking at what's going on in Roblox and Fortnite with mainstream brands entering the space and starting to engage with those audiences. Traditional marketing, kind of, I say traditional, with social media ads and stuff. Geez, that was not that bloody long ago that all that didn't exist, eh? But that's now traditional marketing methods are not getting the return. And so brands are looking for, trying to figure out how to get in front of the audiences and where they are. And we're looking at that as an opportunity for brands to enter these immersive environments and create digital assets that will have a collectible kind of element to them and become increasingly valuable over time once we deploy these interoperable kind of experiences. So I think Roblox and Fortnite are doing a great job of kind of laying out the blueprint, and Web3 has got so much more to offer than what those walled gardens do, that it's going to take some time before a few of the companies build enough of that value into their game experience to kind of break through and really start to onboard builders. So for me, and I'm probably rehashing some of the things that have already been said, but what differentiates it in my mind is you've got, you sort of can look at blockchain as a technology layer where it makes sense. So identity, data, digital asset ownership, these are the sorts of things that are important use cases for blockchain in Web3 gaming, whereas, having your analytics of your game on blockchain is probably not necessary anymore. And we can have, definitely have those bigger functions and those high compute functions living in environments that support them. So we're looking at what makes sense. Is this an opportunity for us to use blockchain to create a better system for our users? Or, as Leah put it, are we just decentralizing for the sake of decentralization? And we try and, be rigorous to that. The community-driven thing's an interesting one. Community is very important, and Leah's 100% right. It's really hard to find a balance, and good community managers are worth their weight in gold. Community is the best and worst thing about Web3 gaming at the same time. But it is definitely, I think, an important part of where this space goes. And open source software has proven that when you give a lot of people access to a product or a service or whatever it might be, you get a faster and better outcome. And then I really love the idea of the play to own to earn type model, where we're looking at using AI to facilitate this in gameplay, where players can utilize AI to create assets that they then own, and then they can contribute to the volume of the game in different ways. And so I think that's a really interesting opportunity that you wouldn't probably necessarily get in those traditional ones.
Amazing. We are starting to run out of time, so I think we've probably got about 5 or 6 minutes left up our sleeve, but tell me if I'm wrong, someone from Decker in the chat. Adam, I'd also encourage you to share that blog article you were referring to before that you wrote a couple of years ago in the chat. We can probably take this conversation in a multitude of ways, but one thing that Trevor and I were speaking about previously yesterday, actually, and definitely keen to hear your thoughts, Adam and Leah, on this, is just sort of how, I mean, when a person looks at the crypto industry from the outside, it often gets batched together, right? We're obviously talking about a very specific niche here with Web3 gaming. And so when it comes down to things like regulation and even how things are taxed, when we're talking about in-game items, etc., I know, Trevor, you said basically Roblox bucks is sort of a form of cryptocurrency yesterday when we were chatting. And Adam, as a builder in a Web3 game, and Leah as someone so deep in it, and now, you know, as an Aussie living overseas, how do you sort of see regulation and also taxation playing an impact on Web3 gaming? Because I certainly can give you a first-hand account of and I'm probably a little bit too old now to be in the target market, but if I'm thinking about playing a Web3 game and I'm in the Australian tax jurisdiction and I've got this massive administration burden, and yes, there's tools out there that may be able to assist, that suddenly becomes less enticing for me to want to play that game. Now, that's a personal first-hand experience, but I want to throw it over to you, Adam, to start to sort of respond to how you think about regulation and taxation when we are really talking about gaming here.
Yeah, there's two interesting sides to this, the company side and then the individual side. On the company side, it is the biggest headache ever. So I think in our launch year, we had something north of 20 million transactions, each worth between 5 to 10 cents each. Handing that data over to an accountant wasn't a fun process. I don't think they liked us very much after that either. From the player side, there is a lot to consider, but to be honest, players, unless you're a long-term person in Web3, you don't actually understand the implications of airdrops, buying crypto, exchanging them for in-game items, changing prices and whatnot. And so I think there's going to be more regulation coming, because for people in crypto industry, it's this huge subject. For players, they are not aware of what's happening, what the regulations, and I think in a year or two, there's going to be a big shock. The ATO might be coming back and checking out a beaver that you bought in Sunflower Land and tracking down how did you win this in game and having to figure that out there.
Pay your GST on that, Adam.
Yeah. So I don't think it's a huge issue for consumers yet, but it's one of those things the tax man always comes back, and in a couple of years' time, there's going to be some very interesting conversations with your accountant about these different game items that you've got playing Web3.
Leah, what are your thoughts on this topic?
Yeah, I agree with Adam. There's just very little knowledge or understanding of how these things are treated, particularly I would say with airdrop farmers, for example. Like, there's so many people out there just trying to get as many airdrops as possible. And yeah, I doubt that they're accounting for any of that. But that to me is a broader crypto problem. I don't think it's necessarily related directly to Web3 gaming. And I don't know how many jurisdictions around the world are looking to be like very friendly to retail traders in that way. I'm not an expert on that, but I think it's more general to crypto. On the company side, I think what I've been following is perhaps where we're seeing like innovation hotspots, where the regulation is still actually quite onerous. So for example, in South Korea, I'm pretty sure that, you know, something like 9 out of 11 of the major gaming companies are all experimenting with blockchain, despite the fact that it has one of the worst policy frameworks for blockchain games in the world. It's pretty much outright banned. But in that case, these guys might be able to help me out here and clarify, but I believe what happens is it falls into the bucket of gambling. So I kind of feel like maybe a lot of these bigger companies, they see the opportunity, they think the risk is worth it, they're going to build anyway. And if they can demonstrate that there is demand for this, perhaps even, you know, have some self-regulation in place to demonstrate that they're doing this properly, maybe there will be an opportunity to actually come up with brand new frameworks that actually recognize this for what it is, which is really, it's a total new category on its own. It's not right to kind of try and shoehorn existing regulations onto this and force these companies to operate under those same frameworks, because it's just not going to work. So yeah, places like that I think are really interesting, because if you're willing to take on that amount of risk and continue building, they're obviously seeing something special.
Trevor, we obviously touched a bit on this yesterday, but we've obviously thrown a few problems on the table here. But if you're a regulator or someone that's thinking about taxing specifically Web3 game items, etc., what are some solutions in your mind?
Yeah, let me just put my Minister of Finance hat on for a second, and we'll figure it out together, shall we? Everybody take a deep breath. I think it's interesting, and Leah raises the right. I think she's on the right track there, but where we're trying to shoehorn these things into existing asset groups and treat them in the way that we treated everything else that's come along. And it's just not working. And it's penalizing people that don't deserve to be penalized, and people are profiting that don't deserve to profit. And you've got, a bunch of different functions that have never really existed in the way that we treat them. Things like staking, you talked about airdrop farming. I look at like how DAO structures and things like that are working, and how people are being rewarded for participating in governance and things like that within the organizations. So a lot of factors going into each of these individual, and almost every game has its own tokenomics strategy to try and figure their kind of mix about all of this out and evaluate risk versus profit, and there's a lot of that sort of stuff going on. So I think it comes down to intent, and I think that's where a lot of this stuff needs to be looked at. Like, what is the intent of the asset? Is the intent for people to have fun and augment their game experience, or is the intent for them to participate in some kind of model that rewards them for their participation, their time, and their effort? Like the cases where you're already starting to see, and I saw Leah was kind of engaged with this in the Philippines, where you've got these people earning an income from participating in these environments and in these experiences. And what is the intent of that game or that experience? Is the intent for them to perform a compute function or some kind of worker-based function that they're rewarding for them with this magical internet money, and then they're providing ways for them to take that magical internet money and turn it into real money? So what's the intent behind the use case? And Greg, we talked a little bit about the idea of collectibles, right?
Trevor, can I just pause you just for half a second? Sorry,
Sure.
I know Leah has to jump off because we're so I just wanted to say thank you so much for joining us, Leah, and much appreciated. And go follow Leah on Twitter, Leah_CB. Okay, forget LinkedIn. Too much LinkedIn shilling today. We're going to Twitter, Leah_CB. Back to you, Trevor. Thanks, Leah.
Thanks, guys. Thanks for having me. Nice
to meet you, Leah. Yeah, nothing says Web3 degens like a shameless X plug rather than a LinkedIn plug. Yeah, I was just sort of looking at the idea of collectibles, right? We talked a little bit about artwork and how that's treated. If I buy a piece of art and that artist subsequently blows up and becomes a really big deal, and my art goes from $300 to $300,000, like, what is that? Is that a financial product? Is that an asset? What does that become? If I'm an early participator in Adam's game and I earn a few assets, and then Adam's game takes off and those assets become rare and highly collectible and very valuable within that ecosystem, what does that mean? Is that a financial product? So I think it comes back to the idea of what was the intent of the asset at its inception, and a lot of game companies have got to look at it and say, realize that you can't have your cake and eat it too. You can't want it to be not treated like a financial asset, so you can play with it as willingly as you like, and then incentivize your entire community and player base to earn it in return for certain functions. I mean, or talk about the potential of the profitability of that asset in some way, shape, or form. I think you're getting into very dodgy territory there that we should probably be looking at that as a financial product. And why not? Like, there's, we're going to earn a living in these immersive environments in the very near future. People already are. So it's something that needs to be kind of figured out and understood, and the legislation put in place sooner rather than later, or it's just going to get messier and harder as time goes on.
Amazing. Adam, I'm getting the wrap up from Decker. I think I think we've stuck on
Hang on,
time.
Amy Rose
but
hasn't popped up on the screen yet and done a little one of these.
we're definitely going to throw Tommy and Samira under the bus for running over in their session. But thank you so much to Trevor and Adam, and obviously Leah, who just dropped off a moment ago, for joining us. There are plenty of resources in the chat, including a number of games. Go check those games out. You know, that would be my little preach to everyone in the audience is, if you've never played a Web3 game, what an opportunity to just grab one of these links, and away you go. I'm going to plug Trevor's Twitter. If you want to follow Trevor, it is at TopCat, with cats CATT. So top CATT _. And then I'm just going to scroll up for a second. Adam, yours is Bumpkin Builder, at Bumpkin Builder. Or you can just type in Sunflower Land on X, and that should pop right up. So thank you again, gentlemen. Thank you to Leah. I hope everyone had a good time listening to this session, and I'm going to pass it back over to the boss, Amy Rose.